I'm here to tell you a story about how escaping your problems might solve them. And it all starts when I was at a junction back in 7th grade. It was a difficult time for me because I was originally a sheltered child in elementary school. My step into the bigger pond was one of the most difficult transitions for me because I had no clue what I was supposed to do. It was a huge problem because I couldn't adjust. And if I couldn't adjust, I couldn't find any friends. And if I couldn't find any friends, I couldn't have connections. And if I couldn't have connections, I couldn't make any meaningful relationships. And that was the problem. I was afraid of being alone. I felt like these were the problems that were shackles, and they were keeping me from ever feeling happy. As you can see, I am an overthinker. When somebody says, "Hey, you have a nice shirt," I would immediately think that they had a diabolical plan to destroy my life. I channeled those thoughts and brain power into a sport called debate. And debate is a sport that makes two sets of teams argue for or against a topic. And that was my escape. Obviously, we talked about the most important topics in society, like whether you should choose to be a horse. It was a philosophy round, and it was amazing. But I think that's just one way that escapism can manifest in our lives. Escapism is all around us because of the explosion of content creation and consumption online. Generally, I think that escapism is the tendency to seek distraction and relief from an unpleasant reality. I did this by merely imagining and daydreaming. I also did this through debate. I did this through consuming content like watching something on Netflix, reading a book, or listening to music. And sometimes I would even create my own content, like writing, or drawing, or sometimes making a speech like this. I want to tell you my story and show you that escapism is more than just a way to relieve stress. It was also a way for me to find more meaning in the difficulties in life that were insurmountable. I'm going to show you that in times of troubles and trials, escapism has made me more resilient, grounded, and unique. And although this hasn't applied to every problem in my life, escaping my problems has helped me understand who I am and ultimately solved the biggest problems that I've had, which were the long-term issues of hopelessness, massive stress, and the loss of identity. So a question in your mind might be, did I really solve these problems, or did I just procrastinate and let life take over? I'm going to show you 3 ways that I've made escaping my problems a powerful tool to overcome them, and by the end, let's try to answer that question together. Oftentimes, we talk about facing great adversity. And often resilience is a trait to have when you're facing these problems. I want to show you that escapism can translate into resilience when used correctly. I come from Baguio, and I moved to Manila for senior high school. But after the lockdown, I had to go back to Baguio again. These were times where the adjustments just felt so rapid. I couldn't just suddenly be comfortable. I was shackled by my thoughts. These difficult moments happened because the reality that I was living in was bleak, tiresome, and hopeless. I was confused and my head was breaking apart. I often found myself drained and tired. And over time, it didn't become easier. My heart always felt heavy and my mind just kept telling me that things won't change. Mind kept telling me that I might never see my friends again, and I was terrified of that. I talked to my girlfriend, Rai, and we talked about the saddening reality that sometimes it will be difficult. But I didn't want to talk about that. So we also talked about things like, what if we got out and ate at the amphitheater again? What if I was going to sleep at McDonald's until 3 a.m. for a second time? It made my heart feel lighter. It made me feel like the deep thoughts consuming my head were a little bit less terrifying. Call it a mental hack or a way to trick your brain into feeling better. But the fact of the matter is that it made me a more resilient person, because it helped me cope with the difficult thoughts that I could not avoid. Eventually, it became a positive habit of reflection. For me to realize that life was not as bleak, tiresome, or even hopeless as it should be. However, the fact of the matter is, not every situation is a matter of being resilient. Sometimes you battle and battle and battle, but you don't end up winning. The second thing I want to share is that escaping was an anchor for me. In this context, I would say that anchoring is a synonym for keeping myself grounded to reality. Because I imagine our lives like ships sailing through the sea. Through storms and turbulent winds, I want to make sure that I am still there by the shore, awaiting my next voyage. But sometimes, your boat just gets damaged. It floats away or sinks. And as a student, I've experienced this. January was a difficult time. My motivation to learn was not the highest, and I felt like I was glued to my bed. I was forced to sleep, and a desire to be alone was something that was rearing its head on me. It was already a situation where I was feeling lonely and stressed due to the learning setup. This was also the time where I needed the most help, and I felt like I couldn't get it. It was not a problem that I've had within just 1 week. Every time I got the inspiration to fix my life up, it ended up with me being in the dumps again and again and again. I'm sure that I'm not alone and that everybody has experienced this. But I realized that it was dragging on for so long because I was starting to think that this was reality. That this was the new normal that everybody was referring to. Since I was already experiencing difficulties, it made it so much easier for me to become a difficult person. I was ignoring my friends. I was being a selfish person. I was losing myself in the process of trying to get myself back together. But where does escaping come into play with this? I like playing video games, and among some are League of Legends and card games like Magic the Gathering. These hobbies were my only escape from a breakdown. They were the ones that reminded me of who I am. That I enjoyed playing League of Legends because I loved playing with my friends and not because I'm gifted with the skills of a pro. I loved playing card games for the same reason. And it really shined a light on who I am. That I loved interacting with my friends and loved ones. And the games I played were the ones who were more realistic. They helped me shape my world into a more realistic one, where I had my lovely friends and I realized that I was deceiving myself all this time, that I was alone. I realized that that wasn't true. And these escapes made it so much easier for me to become myself when I wasn't. It reminded me of who I am. But that begs the question, who am I really? And that's the last thing I want to prove to you. That escapism is what defined me. And it's easy to understand that these things that you do, the things that you consume, and the things that you produce are parts of your life and are vital to you. Some people tie their magical personality with their love for Harry Potter. Some people define themselves with their relationships with Taylor Swift. However, it's so difficult to understand what makes you different from all the other people that have the same hobbies and interests. In the 7th grade, I would have said that I was the token quirky person. I like the different things, like pop punk bands and references to Marvel movies that nobody knew. If I see somebody else being quirky, it would get competitive, and it's kind of sad. But it happened. And there was this other quirky guy who started out quirkying me. He said, "Walang forever," at the first day of class to introduce himself. And this was also the time in my life where I had difficulties in making friends. I mean, I just labeled myself the quirky one, so of course I did. I will note that I was not the coolest of people. I often had a tough time getting close with people, or at the very least making friends with them. But eventually, we got close, and we ended up being the bestest of friends. His name is Zai, and he has a twin brother who is also my best friend and equally as quirky, and his name is Sean. And after talking about so many absurd ideas, like being ice pirates, recreating Frozen as a theater production ourselves, and getting 9 PhDs, I realized that we all had different ways of coming up with ideas. For Zai and Sean, it was washing the dishes, and Eureka! Ice pirates, 9 PhDs, recreating Frozen in 12 different languages. But for me, it was sitting on the toilet, rethinking why did I sleep until 3 a.m. in a McDonald's. I got 2 things from this. For one, we're different because we all have different realms of interests, experiences, and personalities. I was more of a Ming Ming guy myself, while all of you might be the Lenny type of people. And that's a Wonder Pets reference for you guys. But for another, the solutions to my problems of who I was were right in front of me all along. I was myself because only I had the power to tell me so. And I had every tool to decide who I was. And if anyone else told me that what defined me was debate, were my friends, and were the conversations that I've had, I would not have believed them. And that's what it means to me. Because I've showed you that escapism could be a source of strength. I've showed you that escapism could be another source of foundation. And I've showed you that escapism could be a source of identity. And I showed you that escapes in my life were the most powerful tools that I've had in solving the biggest of problems. And if you were to ask me again, if I really solved these problems, or if I just procrastinated, I would say that I took matters into my own hands. I took my imaginative thoughts, my friends, and my resources to be able to use to escape the dreadful, dreadful life that I was in. So I hope you escape this talk and think, explore and philosophize, and say that I'm not escaping my problems and evading them. Rather, I'm escaping the shackles that have kept me from solving them. Thanks.